Oh, and the other thing I forgot to say, last Thursday, the hyperthyroid cat with the iodine 131, it's a presentation. I guess I can show it to you right here. It's under cat physiology and pathophysiology. It's the first one, feline radioactive I-131 therapy. Excellent. I mean, my gosh, anything, Ryan, who graduated a number of years ago, but still remembers me. I thought that was kind of nice. Still remembers the exams. Did an excellent job, because this is where the cat's pumping out too much T3 and T4. And one of the treatments is to give it radioactive iodine. The thyroid loves iodine, it picks it up, and then the radioactivity actually kills part of the thyroid gland. And he's kind of developed a new technique, because a lot of the past treatments were injecting sub-Q I-131. You know, this is radioactive, so you got to collect urine and feces. And they've developed where you give it with a capsule down the throat, which is safer because then everything is contained in the capsule, and you don't have to have a syringe with the radioactive material. And you know, if you've ever injected an animal, sometimes if it moves, you'll get a little on the surface, and it's very safe. And he's got a BS in, like, let's say, I'll say it's medical radiography, whatever it is. I can't remember his title, but it was just really good. So if you're interested in that, perfect. Okay, so then let me show you how I altered this page here. So here's where the exam starts, okay? So I did pentobarbital, phenobarbital, stray voltage, which I'm going to click on a few, and then the other stuff was previous to this. We went through altitude, and then there's the line for exam 2 right up to pheromones. And you remember the 80-20 rule. On exam 2, about 80% will be the most recent material, 20% can be anything, past or whatever, okay? So then, we're going to talk about stray voltage, and should I just, I'll go back and do some of the clicks for up here. So, here's the kicker. With stray voltage is where electricity is flowing where it shouldn't be, where it's kind of unexpected. And it's killed pets, it's killed cows, it's killed people. If you do some of the reading, you'll find that out. I have actually been tingled by stray voltage, and I'll tell you how that worked one time. You're not always out there looking for stray voltage. It's one of the last things in your mind when you're working with animals. But, you know, make sure you understand the definitions. I don't know much about electricity, so if it gets into a lot of calculations, I'm not going to ask you anything about that. It's just basically where electricity flows where it shouldn't be, okay? A lot of things get corroded. That's one reason why, and you know, you can read that one. Okay, so then, here, I think that's pretty neat. On this metal pole, they've got this light getting enough stray voltage where it's lit. Okay, somebody's holding this light bulb against this area and it's lit. So that's incredible stray voltage. The third one is more towards dairy cattle, and it's got some good stuff, causes, incidents of problems, symptoms of animals. And I want to talk about this one, reluctance to consume feed or water, because that's where my personal story is. So, you guys know I like cows. I've worked with a lot of cows. Dairy cows are, you know, beef cows as well. But one time I had this experiment where we were doing energy balance in dairy cattle in the postpartum period. Now, energy balance is where it should be at least 0 or positive. If you've got negative energy balance, you can't eat enough that day to meet your energy demands, so you lose weight. So negative energy balance equals weight loss. And we are studying its effect on reproduction. Okay? So all these cows were in this lot, and they all have, you know, identification on there and stuff. And I had student workers helping me. In fact, the best cow person I ever had was a girl from out of Chicago, never touched a cow before. Margie was incredible because she was a learner, so I taught her how to work with cows, and she was better than anybody. Anyway, one day I went out there to check on the cows, and they're all, I think there were about like 20 in this group, they were all looking at the waterer. It was like a hot summer day. Been very, very dry. Well, you know, milking cows, they need a lot of water, right? If they're making 100 pounds of milk a day, or those weren't, but maybe they were making 60 pounds of milk a day. Think about how much water that is just to make the milk. And the cow, you know, cows like me. So, you know, they let me look at the waterer as they were looking at it. Nobody was touching it. And here's my first thought. There's a rat in the water bowl. And they're afraid of it. And the reason that is, I thought of a rat, is because the summer before, one of my students, girl students, was going to go into the bathroom at the old dairy center and ran into a rat that was in the bathroom. And the bathroom was like made of brick walls. Like if you found a rat in this room, how did it get in here? There's really no way to get in. Do you know how it got into the room and left? Through the toilet. Joni was her name. She opened this bathroom. Here's this big rat. They're face to face. The rat turns around and jumps into the toilet, and down it goes into. This is a true story. Needless to say, she didn't use that bathroom after that. Can you imagine? Okay, anyway, so I'm thinking rat. Back to the next summer. I get over there, and it looks clean. The water is clean, and if you've ever seen like those waterers, it was a yellow type where they're elevated, and you know there's electrical current for the winter when it heats the water, and there's a float, so then when the cows drink, it automatically fills up, all that kind of stuff. So they're watching the water. I go over there, and it's like, gosh, guys, this is clean. What's going on? With this finger, I remember. I don't know why. I wasn't expecting electricity. I was maybe thinking it was hot or something, you know, warm. I put that finger in there, and electricity went up my arm and down my body. Not bad, because I'm still here, right? But that was my experience with stray voltage. And here's what happened. Notice how earlier in my story I said it was very dry? It had been a very dry summer, and the ground under the waterer cracked. And the grounding rod that was supposed to be touching earth was not touching anything. So the waterer was not grounded. And so it was looking for another path for the voltage. And this finger was that path. So needless to say, the crew came in. I think what we did is cut the electricity, because they usually don't shut off the electricity in the summer for those things, but you don't need electricity in the summer versus the winter, because like the float takes care of the level. So anyway, that's my story about stray voltage. The cows were not drinking, and just was phenomenal. I just didn't know what was happening. Anyway, there's a lot of stories like that out there. Sometimes it affects milk production. Some people says it causes mastitis. Other people say it doesn't. But it definitely lowers milk production. It might even screw things up so bad that reproduction is affected. And if it's bad enough, it'll kill cows, right? If it's a full voltage. So that article goes in, talks about sensitivity of animals, and you need a very well-trained electrician to go look for these stray voltages. And in some cases, some electricians weren't so well versed on these farms that they weren't really detecting it. And then there's another story, and a lot of this was like at the time Wisconsin and dairy states like that. One time, an electrical engineer came out to look for stray voltage at this farm. And you know, they have their meters and all this stuff. They couldn't find any. And they came back the next week, couldn't find anything. But the farmer was sure there was something going on, because the cows weren't milking were milking less than they should have, all this stuff. Finally, after about a month and a half, that same electrical engineer, kind of made visits trying to find something, found stray voltage after about a month and a half. And here was the story. It wasn't always present. Even when the person was milking or not milking, if you've ever been on a big dairy farm, there's a lot of electricity being used. Here was the problem on his farm. They traced it down. It wasn't his farm at all. It was the neighboring farm. Had some problems, and when the neighboring farm was running a certain piece of equipment, it fed back on the lines and made enough stray voltage that was affecting, this farmer's cows. I mean, that's weird, isn't it? Somebody else's farm was affecting his farm, and it wasn't constant. It was only when this certain piece of equipment was running. Okay, so they have all these stories. Okay, so that's a good article written, and just get the biology out of, get some of these weird occurrences. Okay, so cows behaving oddly. Sorry, let's see, that's not going to work, I guess. That's how you tell if animals aren't right, the behavior. The behavior is the first thing. Like if we have Sasha here and she's not acting right, we'll know that something's wrong. Maybe too many people, maybe not enough giving hugs. The goats we had the other day, we saw those. If you're familiar with goats, they were normal as the day is long. And they went to another class in the afternoon. And it was kind of fun to see them go down steps. Because the room in Lily 3118, it's got those little steps and probably pretty wide. And they would go up the steps fine because that's easy. But here's how they tackled going down. Because they knew it was a drop like that. And here's what the little one did. It jumped up and then down. And then jumped up and down. It was kind of interesting. So very normal behavior. If you know your cows, you know when something's wrong. I mean, just easy. Okay, so now let me show you some of these pictures. This is not in the required reading, so I just wanted to show you what they. Okay, let's see. I thought I had this. Okay, so here's even a more current article than some of the ones I've clicked on. About robotic milking, okay? Remember, there's all kinds of electricity flowing. And so here they're talking about fact sheets that, a fact sheet that talks about stray voltage. And I thought it was very interesting that they have like articles on that already. And I'm going to leave that because I'm going to go to another one. Okay. So here's where, a dog walker in New York was killed. And the reason I got this article here is I want to tell you this can happen to you. So for the rest of your life, it's got to be one of those things that you think about. So here's this person walking her dog. She was electrocuted by faulty wiring under the pavement. And you'll see this when you walk around Purdue. There's sidewalks, but then oftentimes there's metal pieces in the cement. Right? And underneath there, not always, but underneath there's a lot of electricity, wires. And what happens in this case, and there's many of these cases, there's wire that tends to be right below that metal cover, and years of vibration of traffic will rub off the insulation that's around the wires, and then the bare wire will touch the metal plate. And that's what happened in this case. And so she was, did the dogs die too? I can't remember. Several pets and others were killed, shocked. Okay, dog owners. Anyway, I guess it's talking right down here about electrocuted right there. Walking her dogs, okay? So be aware of that. Those metal plates, I mean, it doesn't happen often, but it happens enough that you can be a little leery about it. So dairy farmers in Wisconsin, seemed to be a lot of things happening up there. They would sue the electrical company because it wasn't anything that the farmer was doing wrong. It was something about the way the electrical company brought in the electricity or distributed it on the farm. Again, I'm not an electrical engineer, so things were wrong, and there was a lot of lawsuits. And like here, this person could be awarded up to $13 million because remember at the extreme, like mine was very minor, right? The little tingling, I found out what was going wrong. Sometimes dairy farmers had hundreds of cows. They could never find out what was wrong, and they went out of business. Now that's the extreme. So let's say you have 300 cows. They're not milking, they're not reproducing, they have mastitis, and you have to sell them all. That gets to be a pretty big cost, right? And so there are a lot of lawsuits. And so that goes on forever and ever. And some were overturned, some were remained, and even law offices specialized in stray voltage. Okay, let's see. That's that one. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop there. That's my story about stray voltage. Anybody have any questions? Because since I've drawn the line, I have to stop. You guys can go, you can linger, talk to your neighbor. And that's my story.